Happy Wednesday, everyone. I'm excited to announce that we are shipping. We've shipped about 10% of our total Kickstarter orders at this point, which is about half of the Insider Edition batch, which is our biggest batch. And we are hoping to be through about 75% of all of our Kickstarter orders by the end of next week. I think that's probably ambitious, but that's what we're going for. The shipping container with the remainder of our parts and the parts for orders placed through our website will depart from China on the OOCL New York this Sunday. It was actually supposed to leave on a different ship last Sunday, but there was some sort of an issue and it ended up getting bumped to this week. But yeah, so we're going to be excitedly tracking that as it crosses the ocean. To pack and ship the kits as quickly as possible, we've built an assembly line. Although our space is pretty small, so it's more of an assembly squiggle. But basically we start with an empty box and we move down the line, putting one item in at each station. And then at the end, we weigh the box to double check to make sure we haven't missed anything, and we tape it up and send it off to you. The limiting factor on how fast we can ship kits is our supply of motherboards. So we got our first batch of motherboards that we've been waiting for last weekend, and we immediately started testing them, and we found that there were issues with them. So after a very stressful weekend of testing, we figured out that there was one chip which was not fully soldered on 14% of the boards. So we came up with a testing protocol for finding them, and then we figured out actually a protocol for fixing them as well. So we've been able to send those out. That was just 150 boards was our first test batch. Our next 900 boards were still at the factory. And while we were figuring that out, I asked them to hold on to those boards because I didn't know what was wrong with them. Once we figured out it was the chip that was not soldered correctly, we talked to the factory. Basically, it was their issue. They said they would fix it, but it was going to take 2 weeks to get it fixed, which felt like too long of a delay. So what we're going to do is we're going to have those boards sent to us immediately, and we're going to test and fix them ourselves. It's more work for us, but it's a little bit faster. And even if they did fix them, we would still want to test every single board ourselves anyway, just to make sure they did it right. So either way, we were going to have to test them all. This way we can keep shipping. So those should ship out today and will hopefully be here this weekend. While we're waiting for those boards to arrive, we're packing kits that have everything except for the motherboard in them. That way, when the boards arrive and we test them, we can immediately start putting them in boxes and just taping them up. So that should help things go quicker once those get here. To facilitate faster testing and programming of the motherboards as soon as they arrive, we are working on a test jig. So basically what this does is you hit the button and it will program and then test the board automatically, which should make that process go much faster. The way this works is that underneath there's a series of pins which come into contact with test points on the bottom of the board. Speaking of programming the firmware, in the past we've shipped our Maslow boards without the firmware installed, so that when you got it you had to install the firmware. And we did that because we knew if we didn't do that, if we didn't force people to learn how to update the firmware, a lot of people would never update. And it gets better. Like we have a weekly firmware update, so it gets better every week. Maslow 4, we are shipping the firmware installed because once it's installed the first time, it's really easy to update. You just click a button. But we do want to emphasize that you should be updating your firmware a lot, and we are going to have weekly firmware updates. Right now, there's a lot of like weird, quirky things with the firmware. There's things that are like hard to use. There's definitely still bugs in there. We're sort of like here at the beginning of the like early adopter to like, easy to use curve. And we want to be over here. We want Maslow 4 to be like the easiest to use piece of technology in the world. But the fastest way we can get there is by getting into your hands and getting your feedback. And so, of course, Maslow 4 is an open source project. We would love actual code contributions if you feel like programming. But also, a lot of times the hardest part of figuring out how to make something work right is just figuring out what the correct behavior is. And so if you have an idea for how you would like to see things work differently, let us know in the forums, because we want to take that feedback and make our software better. And finally, speaking of the forums, something really cool happened in the forums this week that I wanted to share. Forums member Jacibra posted these incredible 7-foot-tall light-up guitars that he made with his MakerMade M2, which is MakerMade's version of my old design. And so he posted those in the forums and some light-up signs that he said were going to a trade show. And just 2 days later, forums member J Kitchens 1971 saw them at the show and took pictures and put them on the forums. Like, what are the odds? So I just wanted to share those with you because they're really cool. And then also remind everyone to post cool stuff when you make things in the forums. And also, if you have any questions or get stuck on anything, being part of a community project is like most of the fun. So share and ask questions and welcome new people to the forums. And yeah, so the forums are getting exciting and we'd love to see you there. Have a great week, everyone. I'll talk to you guys next week.